He told my mom that he wasn't going to go to medical school anymore. He was going to go to Poland to build cars. And my mom said, "You're crazy." Well, 30 years later, we've done over 1,000 of them. Carroll Shelby was not a fan of Kirkham Motorsports. He would always call us and he would threaten to sue us every single day. But then the days that he wasn't threatening to sue us, he was buying cars from us.
Any plans for a GT40?
I would like to see a GT40 one of these days. I mean, if you imagine a Mark II with those polished snorkels.
Welcome to the DownShifting Podcast. The stories behind the machines, the people, and the roads that connect them.
Man, first of all, I know you're extremely busy. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Nick Kirkham, and my dad is the owner of the company. He started the company back before I was ever born, so
Okay.
This is all I know. I've been here about 12 or 13 years officially, and
Okay.
I do most of the work on the cars.
Super cool. So can you kind of take us back to your dad's story? I think the story starts around like 89 or so.
Back in the late 80s, that's when my dad was going to medical school initially. So he was not an engineer by trade necessarily. He was planning on being a flight surgeon or a neurosurgeon. And in order to pay for college, he was restoring old cars. And that's where he restored a few of the original Cobras. That's how he got experience in this world. The story actually is a little bit weird. It should be made into a movie. He had a family friend who bought a MiG fighter from the Cold War.
Okay.
And there was damage on part of the plane, and that family friend knew my dad had experience working in aluminum because of the cars that he had been restoring during college. He asked my dad to come look at it, and he noticed it was built the exact same way that a Cobra was built, which was the aluminum skin wrapped around a steel frame. And he said, "These guys can build a Cobra." Well, he got the factory number off of that plane, and he sent them a fax, which the young people won't know what a fax is.
Yeah.
But 24 hours later, they said, "No problem." And he went home, he told my mom, again, this was before I was even a thought, he told my mom that he wasn't going to go to medical school anymore. He was going to go to Poland to build cars. And my mom said, "You're crazy." Well, 30 years later, we've done over 1,000 of them.
Wow. So he basically just flew to Poland on a whim.
Pretty much, he took a little toy model of a Cobra and a Polish-English dictionary, and he left.
Wow. So how was the experience describing from your dad kind of building that first car?
The first car took a very long time. You got to teach a lot of new things to new people, and especially in a language that he didn't speak yet. And one of his biggest successes was taking a stick and actually drawing lines in the dirt, drawing pictures in the dirt about how he wanted a particular part made. And so he got to work with some of the most phenomenal Polish craftsmen back in the day, who could take machines that were horrible Soviet-style machines that were not accurate, and make something beautiful out of them. So the learning curve was a bit extreme, but it was a dream, and man, he fought for it.
That's awesome. So now your main base of operation is Provo, Utah now, right?
Yes, we still have the Polish facility where the Cobras, the body and chassis of the Cobras are still done. Okay. But now we have a lot of the operations are done in Provo as well.
That is super cool. So are the bodies made still in Poland and shipped to Provo?
Yes, they come in a 40-foot container, and we get 3 cars in a stack, 3 stacks deep. They get packed in there in a steel cage. From there, the assembly happens here in the States.
Very cool. So did you grow up here in Provo?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I was technically in Orem for a couple months, but we don't really count that.
Gotcha.
I've been in Provo my entire life.
Okay. So what about your dad? Also in Provo?
My dad was born in North Carolina.
Okay.
And he was part of a military family. My grandpa, his dad, was in the Air Force, and so he moved around a lot. And they ended up right here at the Ogden Weapons Depot. That's where my grandpa ended up working out of. That's where he was college age, and he attended BYU. That's also where he met my mom.
Very cool. So they just never left, and this is home.
And they just never left. And my mom's story was interesting too. Her family moved around a lot as well because her dad was a professor and was teaching at colleges, and so he was always being hired and moving from place to place, and so they both ended up in Utah at the same time.
Oh, that's very cool. That is fantastic. When did you really realize what Kirkham Motorsports is in the kind of Cobra Daytona Coupe world?
I don't know if I realized it early on. I knew that I liked making things, and I knew I was a car guy. It was probably a couple of years into working here before I fully understood what this whole thing was about. So initially, I was still doing the lowly jobs.
Okay.
I was still sweeping the floor.
I was going to say you were still sorting bolts. And
Exactly. And that's where we all start. You got to tell the difference between a 1/2-inch wrench and a 9/16 wrench, right? They matter.
Very cool.
Don't put the wrong wrench in the wrong spot.
That's awesome. Now, at some point, your father runs across Carroll Shelby, correct?
Yes. So in the early days as well, Carroll Shelby was an interesting guy. At the same time, he hated Kirkham Motorsports.
Okay.
Because we were taking something that he did and we were doing it without him, however the story actually goes. But he also realized that he actually could make money off of Kirkham Motorsports. And so we were actually involved in the continuation car series, the 40th anniversary, the 50th anniversary cars. So we've done a lot of work for Shelby American. What they do is they'll buy our rollers and then they'll do additional work on them and sell them as continuation cars. So publicly, Carroll Shelby was not a fan of Kirkham Motorsports. He would always call us and he would threaten to sue us every single day. But then the days that he wasn't threatening to sue us, he was buying cars from us.
Okay.
So publicly, he didn't like Kirkham Motorsports. Privately, he owned a few Kirkhams himself.
So how did that introduction come across whenever they met?
I actually don't really know. I was not old enough to know the full story there.
Okay.
But they had a working relationship all the way up until Carroll passed away.
Wow, very cool. So with that, let's kind of go into the quality of these cars, because I think you were telling us as we were cruising through the shop that basically even down to the colors of the wiring harness is true to the original Cobras.
Yes, our cars are as close to the original cars as you can possibly get. So we will do even original style suspension, that steel A-arm suspension. We strive very hard to get the car nearly identical.
That's very cool. And so that's the reason why really Shelby American leans on Kirkham for its continuation cars.
They do. Shelby also uses a lot of the other Cobra manufacturing companies as well to work. And Superformance, for example, has been a big player in the continuation car game. So during the 50th anniversary series specifically, I don't know the numbers exactly, but I know that Superformance did several more replicas for the continuation series than we did. I think we touched maybe 10 out of 50 for the 50th anniversary continuation series.
Okay, fantastic. And so can you kind of go into some of the old world craftsmanship, because these aluminum bodies are still basically manufactured by hand?
Yeah, we have body bucks and dies that will form pieces on, and the panels are actually welded with an oxyacetylene torch. So we do oxyacetylene welding on aluminum, which is incredibly difficult. And then from there, we actually will file down the weld and we'll sand it and straighten it with a hammer and dolly. So that is that hand work that's done by hand, because the arc can change. And if you don't have a smooth flowing arc, well, obviously it's a mirror, you'll see the defects.
Wow.
And so everything is done until you have a very smooth transition. That touch has to be trained very carefully. And then when it's polished, you have a mirror-like surface. So the car itself is actually made up of 16 individual body panels that don't include the doors, the hood, and the trunk. And obviously you can tell there's not many body lines that you can see.
There is not, for sure. So one of the things that I'm personally fascinated by, we're actually sitting in front of your CNC area. And so how does CNC machining play into basically being able to, I guess, affordably, if you can say that, manufacture these cars versus sort of that 1000% old world craftsmanship?
Well, when you're dealing with the supply chain, everyone has to make money in the supply chain. And so the individual that is selling the material needs to make a profit, and the individual that's cutting the material needs to make a profit, and the individual that is CAD designing and CAM programming and doing the machine operation, they also, they gotta get their bills paid. Well, by holding most of the processes in-house, not only do we maintain quality control because we have a direct path to every single one of those jobs.
You eliminated a ton of overhead, basically.
We eliminated a ton of overhead just by having our employees do multiple of the same job. For example, instead of having a traditional CAD operator that just does SolidWorks design, I'm trained in CAD, CAM manufacturing, so the actual programming of the part, and also I will set up and run the machines, clean the parts, and install the cars. So it's 5 jobs that's been taken over by me.
Gotcha. Okay. And you essentially control all the quality through that whole process.
Exactly. And so there's one stage of accountability for all of the parts.
Okay. Well, me being a absolute huge Shelby traditional person like this, I would have to say that this definitely falls into the supercar category with that. And you were just talking as we were walking through the facility about the Daytona Coupes. Can you kind of go into that Daytona Coupe side?
Yeah, the Daytonas came about as the next step, I guess, of the company in terms of the company's growth. And we have had clients that have bugged us in the past about doing a Daytona replica for a long time, and we finally pulled the trigger on that. We've only done 18, I think, roughly right now, Daytonas, versus about 1,000 Cobras.
Okay.
So there's definitely a lot more exclusivity on the Daytona side. However, because we actually have done even more of the process, we've brought even more of the process of the Daytona in-house rather than the Cobras. The Daytona takes about 4 times as long to build.
Okay, very cool. So very labor intensive then.
Very labor intensive car. There's a lot of pieces involved in the Daytona, and we've been always getting better. Our Daytonas that we do now are better than the first one we did, and definitely our Cobras are better now than the first ones we did.
That is super cool, man. So, $1 million question. Any plans for a GT40?
I would like to see a GT40 one of these days. I mean, if you imagine a Mark II with those polished snorkels, that'd be just a phenomenal look.
That's putting the stamp on it.
There is possibly a route for us doing that. However, we got a lot of work already ahead of us.
Right. Yeah.
Just as it is.
Yeah, you guys are covered up, man. So you also have kind of ventured off into copper and bronze?
Yes, we'll do different metals on our cars as well.
How did that get started?
Well, it was 2004, either 2004 or 2006. Chevy was unveiling their new Corvette in all of the auto shows. And Ford didn't have a product that was that great, not to dog on the 04, 06, whatever generation Mustang, but it just wasn't quite there. And Ford turned to us and they said, money's no object, just build us something.
Okay.
Well, we actually built them a old hot rod style car, and it was initially done out of polished aluminum. There was a copper insert that was being placed on that copper 40 Ford. And when the copper got polished, my dad just fell in love.
Okay.
And decided, and this was imminently, like the Ford needed the vehicle imminently for the shows. Scrapped the aluminum body within weeks of Ford taking possession of the car, and we actually redid the entire body out of copper on this old hot rod style build for Ford. Well, as soon as Ford had it, it stole the show. It was the most amazing thing anyone had ever seen, this polished copper look. And from there, we had clients that were just interested in getting a copper car done in the typical Cobra style. And since we had figured out those processes, we gave them a copper car, and we figured, is there another metal that we can do? And bronze became a thing. So we've done very few copper cars, very few bronze cars. It's definitely extremely exclusive. Typically, the clients that are getting a copper car or a bronze car, they already have one of our aluminum cars.
Okay.
So and that's the one that they drive, and they generally don't touch the copper or the bronze.
Very cool. You were actually telling us some of the clientele have some of the cars in glass cases in high-rise office buildings.
Yeah, we have some very interesting clientele. We have a very large range of clientele, all the way up to your Forbes top 10 list in net worth, down to the guy that saved for 10 years of his life and bought one of our cars. Some dude that is a craftsman by trade, builds homes, for example, or a roofer, and they just have a fairly successful company and they want a piece of history, honestly.
So it's 100% achievable.
It is 100% achievable, and yeah, don't sell yourself short. These things are available to everyone, just if you knuckle down and get some work done.
That's super cool, man. And you were telling us you have a twin brother.
I do have a twin brother, yes.
Okay. You mind telling us a little bit about him?
Well, I lost a 9-month race by 8 minutes.
Okay.
So he's older than me, and he's actually minorly involved in the company, but he's pre-med. He's gonna go for the DO route at school, and he just found a passion that he loves in the medical world, and taking after my dad, actually, because my dad dropped out of medical school. Hopefully my brother doesn't drop out of medical school also, but that's something that just called to him.
That's cool. And so kind of two different paths went. So when did you figure out at what age, like, this is you, this is who you are?
Probably very long. I'm a car guy.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is my dad is not very much a car guy. He's a making things guy.
Okay.
It just happened to be Cobras.
Okay.
And but I got the car bugs, so I'm a bit crazy about these things.
That's fantastic, man. Well, it's super cool that you're carrying on that tradition. So that's pretty amazing that it landed like that, and it's not, going to be gobbled up by some corporate company that's just, slapping a stamp on stuff.
No, yeah, I have plans for this company if I ever get a hold of it, but I think my dad is going to be holding on a wrench until he dies.
Well, that's kind of my leading question is, obviously this is very much what you're building here is steeped in a ton of tradition, very old ways, very hand craftsmanship, along with integrating a lot of modern technology, along with the quality control that should go with it. So kind of what's the next chapter for you in Kirkham Motorsports?
Well, I think currently we're just trying to get better with every process that we build. Again, I'd love to see a GT40 one day. That would be the logical next step in terms of a car that we build. But at least right now we've been just absolutely kicking it with these Cobras. Everyone seems to love them.
That's fantastic, man. Well, listen, I cannot thank you enough for sitting down with us. I really appreciate your time. The shop is going like mad as we're sitting here talking. There's people working in the background, so I'm going to let you get back at it because you've got a full day booked.
Oh man, it never stops for me. I tell people I work 8 days a week.
There you go. So thank you very much again.
Thank you, man.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.